Thank you, everyone, for being here. Starting out today's press conference will be Brian Lutz, the Wright County Attorney.
Good morning, Brian Lutz, Wright County Attorney. First of all, my thoughts and prayers go out to the victims and their families. Gregory Ulrich shot 5 people Tuesday, February 9th, killing one of them. The victim was a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister. She went to work and she didn't come home due to the senseless gun violence inflicted by Gregory Ulrich. Again, my thoughts and prayers go out to the victims and their families. A lot has been said about contact that Gregory Ulrich has had with law enforcement. My office, the Wright County Attorney's Office, hasn't had contact with Gregory Ulrich since 2006 when we prosecuted him for a DWI offense. He had a series of DWI offenses, 2004, 2005, and 2006. Since that 2006 DWI, my office has not had any contact with Gregory Ulrich until this charge. No reports have been referred to my office, the Wright County Attorney's Office, since that 2006 DWI. His criminal history is rather limited. I know from viewing court documents after this tragic shooting occurred that a doctor at Atlanta Clinic obtained an HRO against the defendant in 2018. I also know from viewing court documents after this tragic shooting that Gregory Ulrich violated that HRO. The city of Buffalo, like many cities, has their own city attorney's office who prosecutes misdemeanor cases. The misdemeanor HRO violation was a misdemeanor level charge that was prosecuted by the city of Buffalo city attorney, not the Wright County Attorney's Office. My office prosecutes felony matters for the city of Buffalo. What I know about that HRO and the violation of that HRO is from documents that I obtained online, similar to what other people in attendance here today know about that matter. I have no direct knowledge or involvement in that HRO prosecution. What I can talk about is the horrific violence that Gregory Ulrich inflicted at the Atlanta Clinic on February 9th, 2021. I did file and provide to media a detailed complaint describing what happened on February 9th and also detailing the charges that Gregory Ulrich is facing. I brought some additional copies, paper copies, if anyone needs one, following this press conference. Gregory Ulrich rode the Trailblazer, a form of public transportation in Wright County, to Atlanta Clinic with a fully loaded 9mm semi-automatic handgun. He went to Atlanta Clinic with additional rounds of 9mm ammunition on his person. He went to the Atlanta Clinic with 4 improvised explosive devices that consisted of gunpowder encased with a fuse ignition. Gregory Ulrich went to Atlanta Clinic knowing that he was going to shoot up that clinic. Gregory Ulrich went to that clinic knowing that he was going to explode bombs at the clinic. He did just that, cowardly injuring innocent people, one of them fatally. I'm proud of how law enforcement swiftly and courageously responded to this violence. They entered the medical clinic not knowing if their lives were in jeopardy from this active shooter. And their efforts in swiftly and courageously entering the clinic saved lives, allowed injured victims to be treated, and prevented additional fatalities. I spent much of yesterday at the Sheriff's Office working together with various police agencies who are behind me here today, the Wright County Sheriff's Office, Buffalo Police Department, the ATF, the Minnesota BCA, the FBI. I'm proud of their efforts coming together to work this case and present a case for me for prosecution. What I will do as county attorney is aggressively prosecute Gregory Ulrich for these crimes and hold him accountable for what he did. He appeared in court this morning at 10:30. Bail was set in the amount of $5 million with conditions, or $10 million without conditions. One of the conditions included GPS monitoring so that court services can know where the defendant is at all times. He's due to appear back in court on March 22nd at 10:30 a.m. With that, I'll turn it over to Sheriff Derringer from the Wright County Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you for giving us the avenue to get our message out. City of Buffalo and the Wright County area absolutely mourns the loss. Probably like no other time in our nation's history have we celebrated our healthcare workers. They have been on the front line for over a year now with the pandemic. They know every day when they come to work that they're putting their own personal safety at risk. None of them ever expected to find the circumstances that they were faced with on Tuesday morning at 10:54 a.m. We as a community are mourning. I mentioned it Tuesday afternoon when we briefly met. These are our family members. These are our neighbors. These are our family. We are a tight-knit community and look out for one another and care for one another. We have a lot of blessings out here in Wright County, and for that I'm thankful for. But I just want the victims, everyone that was in that building today, and the community at large have been victimized. And I want you all to know that I am humbly praying for all of you. I want you all to know that this remains a very active investigation. As County Attorney Brian Lutz alluded to, yesterday we had over 50 investigators from the Wright County Sheriff's Office, the Buffalo Police Department, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the ATF, and the FBI. It's nice having these resources and partnerships in place. When we have something like this, we were able to check off a lot of things in the investigation yesterday. So it's always nice having these relationships. We had another briefing this morning at 8:30, and those 50 investigators are all back out doing things again today. So we will continue to progress this investigation, but please know that it is still very active. We are continuing to interview witnesses, and I would just ask, as I look at my notes, if anyone feels they have any information, however insignificant as you may feel it is, I ask that you would contact our tip line, which went up yesterday at about noon. That phone number is 763-682-7733, and that phone number is manned 24 hours a day. Case update real quick. We have released the Super 8 motel in the city of Buffalo, and we have also released the 143 Pulaski Park address. Those search warrants have been completed. The evidence has been collected, and those locations have been released. We do continue to hold on to the clinic for obvious reasons, but we're still continuing some investigative efforts inside that building today. Before we release that, I suspect that it may be released sometime today, but we certainly want to do a final walkthrough and just make sure that we have everything incorporated. As County Attorney Lutz briefly alluded to, I think the purpose that I really want to stand in front of you today is talk about the response from the Wright County Sheriff's Office, the Buffalo Police Department, and initially the Minnesota State Patrol. In a very short order of time, it's interesting, people think that maybe in rural Minnesota that we don't have the training and equipment necessary to handle something like this. I want everybody to know that within a very short amount of time, we had 70 law enforcement officers on scene. Within the first 10 minutes, we had confronted the suspect and took him into custody. Within 23 minutes of the first 911 call, we had every victim removed, a secondary search for suspects taken care of, and the building was evacuated. I also want to mention that every single first responder, I think I was the 11th or 12th one there that day, every single one of the first responders that went into that building knew that they were going into a building not only with the suspect at the time until he was dealt with and taken into custody, bomb left in that building. Yet they fearlessly ran into harm's way, did what they needed to do, rendered aid to the victims at their own peril. I could not be more proud as the Wright County Sheriff of the staff of the Wright County Sheriff's Office, the Buffalo Police Department, and the Minnesota State Patrol. What I saw, witnessed, and heard that day was absolutely nothing short of heroic. They had unbelievable professionalism and truly let their experience and training take over. It was a wonderful effort by all responding officers, and I could not be more proud of the heroism and professionalism that I witnessed on myself that day. If you could imagine the healthcare workers in that clinic, doctors and nurses caring for their own co-workers after they had been shot, I can't even imagine what that looked like and what that felt like for them. We came along to help them and continued to triage the situation and continued to render aid. But I cannot imagine the heroism that was displayed by the Alina staff that day while we were responding. Can you imagine our dispatch center receiving those 911 calls from frantic people, relaying the information to the responding officers on the road in a clear and concise manner to get us the information that we so desperately needed to get there as quickly as we could get there? From our patrol officers that came from every corner of the county, knowing that they were risking their own personal safety, rushing to a scene as others are running from the scene. That's what we in the public safety sector do. We know that that's part of our job, and we do it for the community because each one of us signs up for this job because we've got the heart of a public servant. We think of ourselves less and the people that we serve more. And that's what it's all about, folks. I've often said in my tenure that relationships are absolutely invaluable to us, and we devote a lot of time and meetings and efforts to continue with those relationships, to build those relationships, and make sure that we know the people on the other side of the phone. You have no idea what it means for me to be able to pick up my cell phone and call Terry from the ATF or Superintendent Evans from the BCA and have somebody answer that phone call knowing what we need and how can we get the help that we need. It's by making these relationships, having these relationships, and asking for the help and their willingness to help us out as we're willing to help others out. I would like to thank the following. The Hennepin County Sheriff's Office on the first day sent their crime scene team, they sent their command post, and they had sent out several detectives to help us with those initial interviews and statements. For that, I cannot thank Sheriff Dave Hutchinson enough. Certainly the Minnesota State Patrol and the DNR, who helped us initially clear the scene, helped render aid to the victims. For that, I thank them very much. As the investigation continued and the hours or the minutes ticked by, we had help very quickly from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the ATF, the FBI, the Buffalo Fire Department, the Maple Lake Fire Department, the Howard Lake and Cokato Ambulance Services. Minneapolis Police Department has given us several resources, which I cannot thank them enough for, including their bomb squad and their PIO. It's been wonderful working with all of these agencies, and we all bring our own talents and treasures to the table, and we're able to get the job done. I'd also like to thank all of the other sheriffs and police chiefs from across this state that have reached out to me with an encouraging word, and it seems like God knows just what we need right when we need it, because those encouraging words seem to come at the perfect moment in time. I think that all of us in the Wright County Sheriff's Office have said it many times, and I know that other law enforcement agencies across the state feel similar things. But I have truly felt humbled to serve in the Wright County community. Over the last 2.5 days, we have received hundreds of emails, phone calls, text messages, people from our community, businesses from our community, asking what they can do to help, whether it's providing lunch for the 50 investigators that are, out continuing to do the efforts, whether it's providing coffee, hot chocolate. These things have just been showing up. We'll probably have to go to the food shelf after this is all done, because our community has just been so amazing to work for and to work with. Before turning the mic over to Superintendent Evans, I would also just want to say, obviously, we don't live in a vacuum. I've been watching the news media. I've been watching the social media posts. I think that it's human nature for us, right? We want to push blame. But now's not the time to necessarily push blame. We're all working very hard to bring some of this to a conclusion, to give closure and justice to those that have been victimized in our community. While I know that we have had previous threats made by Mr. Ulrich, I also want you to know that there has been nothing recent in the past several months or even a year that we would have been aware of where we would have taken immediate action to try to circumvent or prevent what happened Tuesday morning. If we are going to push blame, I would ask that people push blame where blame is due, and that's on a suspect that decided to go into a Buffalo clinic to victimize people that are truly trying to help their communities every day when they go to work. If we're going to push blame, I would like to push blame on Mr. Ulrich, who is responsible for the devastation that happened in our Buffalo community. Unfortunately, folks, we in the law enforcement community deal with people day in and day out that say many things in anger. Believe me, we do our best to try to mitigate what those threats constitute and what that looks like. We have several partnerships and relationships in the Wright County area. Just 2 years ago, the Wright County Sheriff's Office and the Buffalo Police Department, including the Annandale Police Department and the Howard Lake Police Department, have partnered with the Central Minnesota Mental Health Team. When we get a med-psych call or somebody struggling in crisis, when we respond, we immediately reach out to Central Minnesota Mental Health, and they have been able to triage that situation right there, get an appointment for somebody struggling with these mental health issues. Mental health continues to be a problem across our communities. I have already spoken to a senator, a couple of state legislators, and our congressman, Tom Emmer, about what mental health looks like in our day-to-day operation. So as all of these entities are in their legislative bodies right now, it's important for them to try to come up with something that's really meaningful and impactful in our local communities. So with that, I thank you for coming out. Thank you for letting me say my message and really commending the men and women of law enforcement in the Wright County area, and certainly my team at the Wright County Sheriff's Office. I could not be more proud of the work you've done from the start of this incident to right now. With that, I will turn it over to the BCA Superintendent, Drew Evans. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, reiterate, as the Sheriff noted, for being here today. My name is Drew Evans. I'm the Superintendent of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. I'd like to reiterate a few things that the Sheriff said. First and foremost, our thoughts, prayers, and sympathies are with all of the victims that were impacted by this real tragic event. We're thinking of them not only as the tight-knit community that the Sheriff noted today, but an attack on one Minnesotan is an attack on all Minnesotans. And we stand here in solidarity with this community on behalf of the state of Minnesota. I would like to also note in this incident that both, as the Sheriff noted as well, that our hearts go out to everybody that was at the Alina Clinic today. And I want to reiterate, as somebody that was in St. Paul when this incident happened, that what the Sheriff noted for the heroism of those first responders that went into that volatile situation really should be commended. They were thinking of the safety of all the people in that clinic above their own safety as they went into an unknown situation. In this particular incident, we're providing assistance to the Sheriff's Office, as he noted. I'd like to commend the Sheriff for forming a great team, as he noted, of investigators from all the different entities noted, from the Sheriff's Office to the Buffalo Police Department, to the ATF, to the FBI, and as he noted, Minnesota State Patrol, DNR, and others responded initially to this scene. That team of 50-plus investigators, as he noted, is out working right now diligently on this investigation. And they will continue to gather all evidence available for the Wright County Attorney so that we can hold Mr. Ulrich accountable for his heinous acts that he performed just 2.5 days ago. I when it comes to these types of investigations, I think all of our hearts sink whenever we see something like this occur. And we all want to work diligently to make sure that we are protecting our communities across Minnesota and that we hold individuals such as him accountable. In the coming days, we had asked that we continue to diligently investigate this. Our crime scene teams assisted this team will be analyzing evidence. The ATF is working on the explosive portion of this that you said and a number of different pieces. That team of federal, state, local investigators will be working to make sure on behalf of this community that they're doing everything they can to hold him accountable. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to questions.
Someone clarify the number of pipe bombs that were found. I understand 2 exploded, is that correct? And then was there another 1 or 2 that were not exploded?
I'll let Sheriff Derringer explain about the investigation. We work under a pretty tight timeline when I'm preparing the complaint. So when I prepared my complaint late last night after meeting with the sheriff's office yesterday, I was aware of 3 pipe bombs, and I was over at the clinic and saw where they had been detonated. My understanding is that additional evidence was produced today or late yesterday, showing that in fact 3 bombs were detonated and 1 was recovered that was not detonated. So I apologize for any misinformation in my complaint. I just didn't have all the details yet.
As the county attorney Lutz alluded to, it's interesting. Some people might say, well, why have you held that building for so long? That evidence was just found late last night. So he hadn't even had time to get it into the complaint. So there was 3 that were detonated on scene, and one other one was recovered that was not detonated. That's currently in the custody of the ATF, and they're in the process of processing that. And obviously we had some information come back from them already yesterday. So as we're out doing these secondary searches and conducting these search warrants, it aids us a lot knowing what we're looking for. Right. There were 2 detonated in the lobby area, and then a third just into an adjacent hallway workstation area. We are still working through that. Obviously, we've got the ATF, they're partners, and we are still working on those tracing dynamics. So that part of the investigation is still very ongoing. I don't have an answer to that. I will tell you that the Wright County Sheriff's Office yesterday worked with the Wright County Attorney's Office. We attempted to get a court order signed by a judge that would give us the authorization to release those records. That court order was denied, and so we cannot make a comment on that. In Minnesota, gun permit data is very private. It's private, not public data. And so we have to be very careful about what we release. I can't even tell you that he made an application, or if I can't even tell you that we don't have data or we do have data. So it's protected. Yes, sir. I would not have that answer.
I can take this question. All we can do is speak for myself and my office and the representatives that are present. We can't speak for other agencies. That was a case that was handled by the Buffalo City Attorney's Office. Any knowledge I have about that case isn't direct, and it comes only from looking on documents online similar to your review of those documents. So I don't have the answer to that question. Again, I can only speak for my office and myself. That case was a misdemeanor case handled by the City of Buffalo. He was found incompetent. Again, this is just from a review of court records. He was found incompetent following a Rule 20 evaluation, and the rules of criminal procedure require on a misdemeanor case dismissal.
The criminal complaint specifies that he left a video message on his phone. Can you talk about what he said in that message?
I watched it yesterday. It was a rambling message where he talked about his own injuries. It certainly shows his premeditation and his intent to go to that clinic to inflict damage. My understanding, it was recorded shortly before he went to the clinic. The sheriff may have more to add on that.
While his hands may have been, while your hands may be tied to release date on some of the gun data, can you paint a picture at least on how someone like this, who does have a history here, could acquire a gun?
Certainly one of them is human error, right? That the flags are there in the systems that we have, and the system is overlooked or the flag is overlooked. In some of this, I've often said, so I have 2.5 full-time people in the Wright County Sheriff's Office that do nothing but gun permits, whether it's permit to carry, permit to purchase. And so I have sent them to a lot of training, and I have a great deal of trust with the people in my office that take care of those. So human error is one. The other thing is sometimes, and I've said this before, is you have to have a master's degree to read some of these criminal histories. They're not always clear. And I've instructed my people that if there's ever a question, we reach out to the Wright County Attorney's Office all the time. They have a representative in their office that deals specifically with gun permits and things like that. So sometimes they do slip through the cracks. Obviously, we're talking about legally purchased, but we could also have circumstances where somebody illegally obtains a firearm on a street corner, similar to drugs, right? So that's some of the ways. But some of the messaging, if people aren't looking very closely at some of the disqualifiers, there is a number of them. But if it's this, then it's this, and if you just kind of keep going down the cycle. But they're not always easy to read. I know that the BCA is working on a clearer system. They've actually implemented a number of steps in the last 2 years that have made it a lot easier for those flags to stick out a little bit more to us, so we know. But I would say the most common way is human error or an error in reading the criminal histories and what may constitute a disqualifier versus a similar incident that's actually not a disqualifier. So fortunately, in the Wright County Sheriff's Office, we have a great relationship with the County Attorney's Office, who helps us a lot with making those final decisions.
Now, are HROs and in their cases part of that review for firearms permits?
I would say county attorney might have more to offer on this, but HROs maybe not so much. Order for protections, yes. Intimate partners, things like that. So there are some disqualifying factors, but there are other factors that aren't necessarily disqualifiers depending on the relationship of the people with HROs or OFPs. I didn't hear you. That would not be a disqualifier.
He shot 11 times, according to the complaint. He still had 49 more rounds on it, so he's prepared to shoot a lot more. You know, why didn't he stop?
I could only make assumptions on that, but the staff that were left in the building did an excellent job of barricading themselves into locked offices, closed offices. They were able to grab whatever people they could. Other people ran out of the building, so he might have walked through hallways to an empty building, but the suspect himself did call 911 and did surrender in the lobby of that building. So he may have ran out of victims based on the quick actions taken by those that were left inside. And
Two questions left, please.
Follow up on that. How many were there?
we're still working through that.
Do you ever feel like,
Question, I may have been answered when I stepped down the roof, but was this doctor who inside the building, did it seem to be the target of his anger at healthcare? Was that doctor inside this clinic on that day?
I'm not aware of that. I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm not aware of that. If anyone else has.
real quick, can you comment on whether a law ever makes you feel like your hands are tied to have to approve any kind of gun permit when you might know someone personally that they maybe shouldn't have one?
I will tell you that there is someone in Wright County that has made several applications, and technically they qualify. There's no disqualifiers, and I have not given them a permit. And so sometimes our hands are tied, unfortunately. Sometimes I may have to defend myself in court, right? If they sue me because technically they're not disqualified, I will have to answer to that in a court, and hopefully my sound good judgment and the reports that I would have to back me up would prevail in court. So sometimes, yes, our hands are tied, but the law is clear that if they meet this threshold, we shall issue. It's not like, hey, it used to be where we could still use a little bit more discretion. It is we shall issue. And so technically, sometimes our hands are tied, but I still want to rely on my good judgment and talk those things over, certainly with the advice of the county attorney's office.
Just a second, just a second, please. Superintendent Evans?
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So the only thing I just want to make sure everybody understands is you're asking really excellent questions about how an individual like this would have a firearm. And I want to assure all of you that that's exactly what this team is doing. We're looking into that. There's a complicated set of laws, has been noted, both at the state and federal law. We'll be working through all of that, and we will have those answers ultimately at the end of the day. But as was noted, we have a team working right now to support the criminal complaint that was filed today. That's the first and foremost activities for our investigative team to be working on, and then we will work through all these questions that are very good questions for you to have. So I just want to ask for your patience as we work through that. It will be something that this team will be examining.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. Additional questions can be sent in through the individual law enforcement agencies' PIOs. Wright County does have a PIO, so if you have additional questions for the sheriff or for those teams, please, by all means, get in touch with them. I have additional copies printed of the charge sheets. If anybody didn't get it already, please feel free to come up and we'll get you squared away with them. Thank you.